Welcome, family, to the Truth Be Told Flex podcast family, and also those who will join us on YouTube. This is Shia Yeshub Judah, and we have promised that we were going to get into the Project 2025 on a regular show, but the way current events be taking shape and the amount of news that we be having to cover from week to week, it's real doubtful that we will be able to find the time to deal with Project 2025 on the regular show. So I have taken it upon myself to bring Project 2025 to the Truth Be Told Flex podcast family, and also post it here on YouTube where it'll be public. Let me tell you how my thoughts about Project 2025. You have heard all types of opinions coming from both the right and from the left about Project 2025. You have heard Kamala Harris talk about how it is trying to put us backwards and put chains back upon us. But my genuine opinion of Project 2025 is this. There are things in Project 2025 that I just flat out disagree with off the top. Okay. Project 2025 is not a perfect document. And how can be a perfect document when it has been written and created by imperfect men? But the thing that I have seen that is consistent with Project 2025 is this, is that Project 2025 is attempting to give the power back to the people and take the power out of the government, or at least equalize it. Let's put it on a fairer playing ground. In my opinion, this is one of the reasons that the Democratic Party have such a hard time with it, because with Project 2025, their job is to undo a lot of the programs that the Democratic Party have put in place. Now, the Democratic Party have put a lot of programs in place to keep the people, and especially the sons of Jacob, in a degenerate state. We find it to be helpful. We think that they are the ones that care for us because of these certain programs that they have. But in this first part of the document that we're going to cover today, we're going to see that these programs that they have put in place have been mainly put in place to keep us in a state of disability. Okay. They have hindered us more than they have helped us. Okay. And so with Project 2025, like I say, they are trying their best to shrink the size of the government, give power back to the people. Now, let me put this out there. And I feel like that this is probably a disclaimer that I'm going to have to put out every time I come and talk about Project 2025. I do not vote. I am not pro-Trump. I am not pro-Harris. I am not left, neither am I right. I am not a conservative. I am not a liberal. I'm not a Democrat, neither am I a Republican. My citizenship is in Shanaim. It is in heaven with the Most High, who created the heavens and the earth and all that is in them is, who gave us our Savior, Yeshua HaMashiach, who died for us, that he could redeem Israel and make good on the promise that he made to our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But we are in a world, and it would do us wise that we will understand the things that are happening in the world that we are in. With that being said, we are going to read Project 2025. We're going to get into it. Sorry about that. We're going to get into Project 2025. And we are going to discuss it as well. And the first part of Project 2025 that we are going to deal with is going to be the Department of Housing and Urban Development, that is better known as HUB. And let's get to it. Reading has become a lost art. So we're going to read. We're going to read as much as we possibly can in this part of the document, and we're going to discuss it as well. And remember, we're going into this thing unbiased. We don't have a right or wrong view when it comes to it. We just want to point out that what it is saying and how it is going to affect us as a people. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This part of the document was created by Benjamin S. Carson Sr. That's Ben Carson, the surgeon, Dr. Ben Carson. That is his department. And I'm going to tell you my personal thoughts on Ben Carson is not all that great. It's really not. It's not all that great. Okay. That is for a later show, though. We're not going to get into that, but let's see what Ben Carson has to say about this. It says that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, administers a web of federal programs with mandates to support access to home ownership and affordable rental housing, relieve temporary housing, instability for homeless persons, preserve a stable inventory of public housing units, and enforce mandates with powers to settle compliance matters ranging from housing quality standards to housing discrimination cases. Politicians across party lines use HUD to promise ever greater public benefits. In addition, HUD programs tend to perpetuate the notion of bureaucratically providing housing as a basic life need, and whether intentionally or not, fail to acknowledge that these public benefits too often have led to integrational poverty traps and have implicitly penalized family formation in traditional two-parent marriages and have discouraged work and income growth, thereby limiting upward mobility. A new conservative administration will therefore need to. Before we get to the therefore need to, let's deal with this part here. Regardless to my personal opinions on Ben Carson, I agree with him totally on this part. Politicians across party lines use HUD to promise ever greater public benefits. In addition, HUD programs tend to perpetuate the notion of bureaucratically provided housing as a basic life need, and whether intentionally or not, I do believe that it is intentional. They fail to acknowledge that these public benefits too often have led to intergenerational poverty traps. We are now suffering right now in 2024 from some of the programs that HUD have put in place dating all the way back to Lyndon B. Johnson and maybe even before. These were done intentionally. I believe that Dr. Ben Carson himself know that they were done intentionally. We are going to see directly through Project 2024, Project 2025, the blunt differences between liberalism and conservatism. We're going to see it. Okay. These programs by HUD have led to intergenerational poverty traps, have implicitly penalized family formation in traditional two-parent marriages. In other words, they saying that you cannot be afforded the benefits that we have if you are a married couple. If you are a woman and you have a man in the house, regardless to how much money you guys are making, regardless to the situation that you are in, if you have children and if you are a woman and you are by yourself, we will give you housing as long as there is no man in the house. So you are penalized for having correct family structure. I agree with Dr. Ben Carson on this 100%. And they have discouraged work and income growth. We all know people talking about the sons of Jacob that have been or that is on welfare, that receives food stamps, and they would tell you that they would rather continue to receive the welfare and food stamps than go and get a job because of the amount of food stamps and welfare that they are making. And with the HUD programs, they also encourage the women that the more children you have, the more incentives that we would give you, right? So thereby limiting upward mobility. With these programs, it hinders the drive for these mothers that are without men in the homes to do better for themselves, because the government have replaced the man with themselves. They are now the man of the house, the government. And so in this part of the document with Dr. Ben Carson, he's saying that, yo, we need to do something about this. Because who pays for this? Who is paying for the welfare? Working class people, middle class people. We are. This is why taxes are so high. Regardless if it's people that that is receiving these benefits, and people that you love that's receiving these benefits, we are still the ones that is footing that note. And I agree that something has to be done with it, because as he said so eloquently, this has led to intergenerational poverty traps. So if you want to see why we are still stuck in the ghetto, a lot of this has to do with some of the programs that the left have put in place, and one of them being HUD, Housing Urban Development. So let's see what he has to say. Reset HUD. This effort should specifically include a board reversal of Biden administration's president's implementation of corrosive progressive ideologies across the department program. Implement an action plan across both processes and people. This plan should include both the immediate redelegation of authority to cater of political appointees and the urgent implementation of administrative regulatory actions with respect to HUD policy and program eligibility. Reverse HUD's mission creep over nearly a century of program implementations dating from the Department of New Deal for barriers. HUD's new political leadership team will need to re-examine the federal government's role in housing markets across the nation and consider whether it is time for a reform, reinvention, and renewal that transfers department functions to separate federal agencies, state, and localities. In other words, what Dr. Ben Carson is saying, that it needs to be, something needs to be put in place to where the federal agencies will not have as much power over the states and local officials as they have had. Okay. Overview. HUD was created by the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1965, and since then has administered several programs that had been administered by the Housing and Home Finance Agency. With the proposal fiscal year budget authority totaling $71 billion and 8,326 full-time equivalent employees. It remains the largest government agency charged with implementing federal housing policies. Now, I don't know how many of you guys live in big cities like myself. I'm here in Houston, Texas. And I can tell you that the homeless population in Houston is crazy. And when you look at numbers like this here, and What Ben Carson said, that it remains the largest government agency charged with implementing federal housing policies. You have to ask yourself, with numbers like this, and it's the largest government agency, why is the population of homeless so big? It's just something to think about. It goes on to say, in addition to its headquarters in Washington, D.C., HUD has 10 regional offices as well as field offices and centers to implement specialized operational and enforcement responsibilities. HUD program offices also interface with various networks of implementing organizations such as locally chartered public housing agencies and federal, state, and local government and judicial bodies, as well as such private industry participants as mortgage lenders. So HUD is over the whole thing, from public housing all the way down to people being able to buy houses. Okay. It says that the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development can delegate authority to various entities across the array of HUD programs. The Secretary also oversees the Office of Deputy Secretary, the Office of Hearing and Appeals, OHA, the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, OSDBU, and the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnership, SFBNP. The Office of Secretary also comprises a team of politically appointed positions and career support staff. Each of the following offices should be headed by political appointees, except where otherwise noted. Office of Administrations. So we're not going to get into all of this here. Okay. This here is just talking about the offices and the officers and their positions and the things that they do. So we're going to skip this and we're going to get right to the meat of this thing, man. We're going to get right to the meat of it. It's a lot. You want to check that out, you can. It'll be there. But let's go to first day and first year administrative reforms. It's a lot of reading. I had to make sure I had my water. Right. First day and first year administrative reforms. Change, in other words. It says a new conservative administration can and should implement the following reforms that focus on both people and processes. Implementations of these reforms simply require courageous political leadership across all of HUD's key appointed positions. HUD political leadership should immediately assign all delegated powers to politically appointed PDAS and DAS. I do apologize. I'm not familiar with what those mean. Maybe we'll find out later. Public department, I don't know. Okay. And other offices, leadership positions, change in current career leadership positions into political and non-career appointment positions, and use senior executive services. Transfer to install motivated and aligned leadership. The president should issue an executive order making the HUD secretary a member of the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., which will gain broader oversight authorities to address foreign threats, particularly from China, with oversight of foreign ownership of real estate in both rental and ownership markets of single family and multifamily housing, with trillions worth of real estate secured across HUD portfolio. What's crazy to me is that we who live here, and this is one of the curses of Deuteronomy 28, where it says that the stranger that is amongst you, he will be able to proceed before you, or he will have a higher status than you. I just saw a TikTok of a lady who is a business owner. She bought her first food truck, cash money, $25,000, and she is now about to sell that food truck. She put it on the market. And an illegal alien, right, came to her with paperwork with no credit whatsoever. And the paperwork made it clear that the government would give him the money to be able to purchase that food truck from her. Now, she is not hurting for anything, but she was so hurt, disappointed, and not understanding why is it that she worked so hard to get what it was that she had, and she's still not able to get a business loan according to her, but yet we have somebody who don't even, that is not even from here, that have paperwork that is signed by the government that says that they would give them the money that is required to buy the food truck, and they didn't have to do anything. This is what Ben Carson is talking about in this part right here, where the president should issue an executive order making the HUD secretary a member of the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., which will gain broader oversight authorities to address foreign threats, particularly from China, with oversight of foreign ownership of real estate in both rental and ownership markets. These enemies, people that is not from here, they are able to acquire homes, they are able to acquire lands, they are able to acquire businesses, when we who are from here, who have been here, who is not going anywhere, can't get loans for either to rent or to buy or to start a business. And guess how they go through this? They go through it through HUD, because HUD is also an arm of civil rights, and civil rights is a program that is put in place for minorities. When they fooled us, when we was thinking that it was supposed to be simply for us, but they never defined what a minority was. Now, anybody and everybody can be a minority, including homosexuals. So you got these foreigners coming over here that's filing correct paperwork, and they're able to do things as illegals that we can't do as citizens. So I agree with that part as well. It says the secretary should initiate a HUD task force consisting of politically appointed personnel to identify and reverse all actions taken by the Biden administration to advance progressive ideology. The Office of the Secretary of the Leadership and the Office of General Counsel should conduct a thorough review of all sub-regulatory guidance that has been instituted outside of the Administrative Process Act. And additionally, departmental leadership should immediately end the Biden administration property appraisal and value equity policies, and reverse any Biden administration actions that threaten to undermine the integrity of real estate appraisals. Repeal climate change initiatives, sending in the department's budget request. Number 3, repeal the affirmatively furthering fair housing regulations, reinstituted under the Biden administration, and other uses of special purpose credit authorities to further equity. Eliminate the new housing supply fund. These are programs that HUD have that they offer to people in order to control them, okay? people who don't necessarily have the means to do certain things, people who don't who are not in a position to do certain things. HUD will come in and they will make a way for them to do it regardless of who they are. But once you get in there, you are now become a victim of HUD and the government. This is why people who live in housing projects, they're subject to, I believe it's twice a year in some states, and I don't know if it's the same in all states, but they are subject to at least twice a year where they will come and they will have their apartment shook down and checked. And these people could come in whenever they want to. Why? Because you're essentially living off of the government's money. So if you're living off of the government's money, that means that they can pretty much tell you how you are going to live. This is why they put in the rule book that if you are a female and you have kids, you cannot get any of our benefits if you have a man in the house. They want to break that family structure down. They don't want you to have a proper family structure. And so what Dr. Ben Carson here is writing up is that we need to find a way that we can start chipping at these programs that is in HUD that is offering so much. And as left-minded thinking people, they like, look, you want to take away the benefits that the government is giving us. No, don't look at it like that. Look at it in the sense of if you're not depending on these things, now you're going to have to learn how to go fish and go catch your own fish. You're going to have to learn how to take care of yourself, which is not a bad thing. And when you start learning how to take care of yourself, you will gain a sense of independence, of pride. Because now you're not selling yourself out for what it is that the government have for you. It goes on to say that the Office of Secretary should recommends proposed regulations put forward under the Trump administration that would prohibit non-citizens, including all mixed status families, from living in all federally assisted housings. This is talking about illegals again, okay? Non-citizens and the mixed status families. I had to look that up. And what a mixed status family is let's say that you have a mother that is a citizen, but she has a husband that's not a citizen, or a brother that's not a citizen. Well, because she's a citizen, the government will still give her a place to stay and will allow these other people to stay in there up under her, and it'll be okay with them. And so he's saying, look, we have got to find a way where these non-citizens, illegal people that don't have the proper paperwork, that is not supposed to be here, we have got to stop taking care of them. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier. We are the ones that is footing that note. We are the ones that is paying for them. And so Ben Carson is saying, look, we got to reverse this program. We have got to come in here and we got to set this thing right. If you didn't come over here right, you didn't get the proper paperwork, we cannot be allowing you to stay in federally funded homes. That's all that he's saying. So therefore, like I said, regardless of how I personally feel about Ben Carson, right now Ben Carson is batting 1,000. He's batting 1,000. Okay. It says HUD statutory obligations include providing housing for American citizens who are in need. And again, in a city like Houston, there are so many. And do you not know that the big population of the homeless are veterans? Just think about that. HUD reforms must also ensure alignment with reforms implemented by other federal agencies where immigration status impacts public programs, certainly to include any reforms in the public charge, regulatory framework administered by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Local welfare organizations, not the federal government, should step up to provide welfare for the housings of non-citizens. Did I hope that didn't go over people's head. Local welfare organizations, not the federal government, should step up to provide welfare for the housings of non-citizens. The federal government is taking care of non-citizens while you have citizens who are out on the streets. And again, it goes back to what I said, that a big majority of the homeless are veterans, people who have done tours, who have fought wars, who have served this country. They are not even afforded the gratitude or the thank you for what you have done for us to find them a place to live, but yet somebody from a whole nother place can come over here and live, and the federal government would give them what it is that they need so that they can survive. I'm liking this part here so far. This is a part that I'm not having any problems with. Okay. It says the office of the secretary should execute regulatory and super sub-regulatory, okay? Sub-regulatory guidance actions across HUD programs and applicable to all relevant stakeholders that would restrict programs eligibility when admissions would threaten to protection of the life and health of individuals and fail to encourage upward mobility and economic advancement through household self-sufficiency. Let's read that part again. The office of the secretary should execute regulatory and sub-regulatory guidance actions across HUD programs and applicable to all relevant stakeholders that would restrict programs eligibility when admissions would threaten to protection of the life and health of individuals and fail to encourage upward mobility and economic advancements through household and self-sufficiencies. In other words, the office of the secretary should execute regulatory and sub-regulatory guidance actions. In other words, look, this is something that I have been saying, and if I'm not reading this right, somebody help me out, okay? Hopefully this here will fall upon enough ears and y'all can help me out. But I've been saying this for years. I don't have a problem with welfare. I don't have a problem with food stamps. What I have is that there is no end to it. This is the problem that I have with it. Okay. And what it sounds like to me that what Ben Carson is saying is that, look, because he talk about the upward mobility and economic advancements through household self-sufficiency, we would give you welfare, we would give you food stamps, but only for so long. But while you are on welfare and while you are receiving food stamps, there are programs and schoolings and trainings and trades that you may have to be going through in order for you to learn you something, in order for you to be able to take care of yourself. That way you will not always be dependent upon the government to take care of you. Okay? This is what the office of the secretary should execute. Where admissible in regulatory actions, HUD should implement reforms, reducing the implicit anti-marital bias in housing assistance programs. We need to reverse that. There are couples that are struggling that need help. Don't encourage the separation in order to receive help. Help the couples. Let the families maintain integrity so that the children can grow up in homes of both the mother and the father. Okay? Strengthen work and work readiness requirements. Implement maximum term limits for residents in PBRA and TBRA programs. Let's see if we can find out what that is. Let's see if we can find out what that is. PBRA programs. The PBRA program is going to be right. Okay, hold on. PBRA program is the project based rental assistance. Okay. That's what that is. And it says that implement maximum term limits for residents in the project based rental assistance. Exactly what I was saying is that, look, you can be in this program, but you can't be in this program forever. And let's see what the TBRA program, let's see what that is. It is the tenant based rental assistance in an essential program that helps low income households afford housing costs. That's what that is. Okay. The TBRA is part of home investment partnership programs. And the PBRA is a type of housing program administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. In this program, HUD directly contracts with private landlords to offer affordable homes to low income tenants at specific properties, something like Section 8, right? And so it says that implement maximum term limits. Can't do this forever for residents in the PBRA and TBRA programs and in housing first policies so that the department prioritize mental health and substance abuse issues before jumping to permanent interventions in homelessness. Notwithstanding administrative reforms, Congress should enact legislation that protects life and eliminate provisions in federal housing and welfare benefits. Policies that discourage work, marriage, and meaningful paths to upward economic mobility. Yo, they get right on the heads of these leftists, man. So when you be hearing these leftists talk about that Project 2025 is they trying to set us backwards. No, they're not. No, they're not trying to set you backwards. So far, I haven't read anything where it's trying to set you backwards. And again, I've read a lot of this. And there's a lot of things in here that I don't agree with. We will talk about that. Okay. Hello? Testing. We still good? Yeah, we will talk about that. But right now, everything that I'm reading is for the benefit of the people. Okay. You can be in these programs. We're not talking about taking these programs away. We're talking about making these programs better. We're talking about allowing you to be in this program long enough for you to learn you a skill or a trade in where you can now take care of yourself, to where you can use this program as a stepping stone to a better quality of life. The AS or PDAS for the Office of Policy Development and Research should suspend all external research and evaluation grants in the Office of Policy Development and Research and end or rely to another office. Any functions that are not involved in the collection and use of data and survey administration functions and do not facilitate the execution of regulatory impact analysis studies. FHA leadership should increase the mortgage insurance premium for all products above 20-year term and maintain MIP for all products below 20-year terms and all refinances. FHA should encourage wealth building, home ownership opportunities, which can accomplish best through shorter duration mortgages. Ideally, Congress should contemplate a fundamental revision of FHA's statutory restrictions of single-family housing mortgage insurance to first-time home buyers. This would include with support from HUD leadership. Moving the home equity conversion mortgages program once again to its own special risk insurance fund. Revising loan limit discriminations, providing statutory flexibility for shorter term products that amortize principal earlier and faster. statutory restriction eligibility for first-time home buyers, and abandoning the affirmative obligation authorities erected for the single-family housing programs across federal agencies and government-sponsored enterprises. The HUD secretary should move the HUD Real Estate Assessment Center, REACT, from PIH to the Office of Housing, which already implements property standards in its multifamily housing lending programs through the multifamily accelerated process. Lending guidelines, giving HUD the authority to streamline the enforcement of compliance with housing standards across the federal government, and flexibility for physical inspections through private accreditation should also be considered. HUD should maintain its requested budget authority for modernization initiatives that are applicable to the Office of the Chief Information Officer and program offices across the department. Longer term policy reform consideration. Congress has charged HUD principally with mandates for construction of the nation's affordable housing stock, in addition to setting and enforcing standards for decent housing and fair housing enforcements. Regardless of intent, HUD's efforts have yielded mixed results at best. Even today, more than a half a century after Congress put enforcements of so-called fair housing in the hands of the HUD bureaucracy, implementations of this policy is muddled by repeated applications of affirmative race-based policies. Also, the production mandate for HUD's housing portfolio has run for decades, with the department effectively working to maintain the public housing portfolio. From the late 1900s, when the Faircloth Amendment capped HUD's public housing portfolio. Longer-term reforms of HUD rental assistance programs should encourage choice and competition for renters, encourage participation by landlords where appropriate, and encourage all non-elderly, able-bodied adults to move towards self-sufficiency. This can be pursued through regulations and legislation reforms that seek to strengthen work requirements, limit the period during which households are eligible for housing benefits, and add flexibility to rent payment terms to facilitate the movement of households towards self-sufficiencies. Yo, I like this. In other words, we're going to give you program. We're going to legislate to where you can only be on these programs for so long. During this time that you're on the program, we're going to help you get to a point where you can take care of yourself. And also, what we're not going to do is we are not going to charge you so much for rent to the point to where you are barely living. That's what he said. He said this could be pursued through regulations and legislative reforms that seek to strengthen work requirements, limit the period during which households are eligible for the housing benefits, and add flexibility to rent payment terms to facilitate the movement of households towards self-sufficiency. We're going to make the rent flexible, right? If $800 a month is too much to where you're barely living, and we know you're going to have to maybe go to school to learn what it is that you got to learn, we can work with that. We can bring that down, knowing that in the 6 months time, you're going to be able to work and make a living, and you will be able to move on from this here. Okay. Obviously, using government vouchers or other such programs to expand housing choice options is not within its downsides. To turn towards mobility vouchers constitute an abandonment of America's public housing stock. and efforts to increase competition in the public housing market must not come at an expense of local autonomy and the ability of cities, towns, neighborhoods, and communities to choose for themselves the sort of housing they want to allow. Freedom of association and self-government at the most local level possible must remain primary considerations in any conservative effort to increase competition in the public housing market. Excuse me. It's a lot of reading, people. It says Congress should also consider those areas in which federal policy negatively interact with private markets, including when federal policy crowds out private sector developments and exacerbates affordability challenges that persist across the nation. It is essential that legislation provides states and localities maximal flexibility to pursue locally designed policies and minimize the likelihood of federal preemption of local land and use of zoning decisions. In the same manner, Congress should prioritize any and all legislative support for single-family homes. Home ownership forms the backbone of the American dream. It does, people. Home ownership, in the sense of home ownership, it creates wealth. And we, as the sons of Jacob, have been denied home ownership on so many levels. Because we have an influx of the sons and daughters of Jacob who have gotten degrees and who are now in careers and have moved into better neighborhoods, there is an illusion that things are better. But when you look at the ghetto, I see the ghetto every day when I go to work. There are still more of us that are still stuck in the ghetto than there are of us that have gotten out of the ghetto. Okay? Why? Because we have been denied the ability of home ownership. Here, with this program thus far from what I'm reading, they are trying to implement programs to where you could become more self-sufficient, to where you can start moving towards home ownership. Take away the programs that make it so difficult for you to have. Remember earlier in the document, aliens, illegal aliens, people who are not citizens, people who don't have the proper paperwork are able to get vouchers from the government to buy homes, to buy land, and to start businesses here in this country, where we who are here, who have been here, still are not able to do that. Okay. It says home ownership forms the backbone of the American dream. The purchase of a home is the largest investment most Americans will make in their lifetime. Home ownership remains the most accessible way to build generational wealth for millions of Americans. For these reasons, American homeowners and citizens know best what is the interest of their neighborhoods and communities. Localities, rather than the federal government, must have the final say in zoning laws and regulations, and conservative administrations should oppose any efforts to weaken single family zonings. And I agree with this wholeheartedly. I have seen prominent neighborhoods come down because of Section 8. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with Section 8, but you know what comes with that is a single mother with 3 to 4 or 5 children And they start moving in these nice homes. I'm talking about $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 homes. And they have a Section 8 voucher and they can move in these homes in amongst these people who have worked hard to buy what it is that they have. And here they are, they paying maybe $100 a month for this $300,000 house. Maybe. And they got all of these kids. And not one family move in, but 4 or 5 different families move in. And you know when their families move in, their cousins move in, their uncles move in, their friends move in, all of these people move in. And now the property value of the neighborhood begins to decrease. It begins to decrease. I've seen it with my own eyes. I'm not telling you something that I heard about. I'm telling you things that I have seen. I love my people. I love my people, and anybody knows me know that I love my people. But at the same time, look at David. David had to befriend Jonathan. They had to become like brothers. So Jonathan taught him how to be a king. David was a shepherd. He was a field man. He did not have royal manners when he first came into the palace. He had to learn those things. And here you are getting people who are from the hood, who is from the projects, who is from backgrounds that are not adequate with this here. And you're putting them in these neighborhoods of $300,000, $400,000 homes, and you expecting them to have the manners of somebody who have worked hard for what it is that they have. It don't work. It don't work like that. Testing. So yeah, I agree with this. I agree with this wholeheartedly. American homeowners and citizens know best what is in the interest of their neighborhoods and communities. And the reason why it's like that is because the federal government allows it. Again, remember I told you at the beginning, this document is more about putting power back into the people's hand and taking power away from the government. Localities, rather than the federal government, must have the final say in zoning laws and regulations, and conservative administration should oppose any effort to weaken single-family zoning. Along the same lines, Congress can propose tax credits for the renovation or repair of housing stock in rural areas so that more Americans are able to access the American dream of home ownership. All of these neighborhoods that you see that are in the hood with these houses that are about to fall down. Roofs caved in. The yards are all grown up. It looked like a single jungle in front of the house. Cars that's been in front of the house for years, they have now become a part of the earth. Well, Ben Carson is saying that Congress can propose tax credits for the renovation and repair of housing stock in rural areas. You sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, and you helping Israel over here, and you raking in all of this money over here, and you getting taxes from all of this here. Well, why don't you put in a program to where these neighborhoods, instead of allowing the people that live in these neighborhoods already, right, to move into neighborhoods of people of higher middle class people, right? Rebuild what they have for them while at the same time teaching them how to be self-sufficient, and then they can have pride in what it is that they already have. I'm all with that. I'm all with that. I don't know. Additionally, enhanced statutory authorities for local autonomy should extend to the prioritizing of federal rental assistance subsidies that emphasizes choice and mobility in housing vouchers, subsidies over statistic sites, base subsidies, and provide authority for all maximal flexibility to direct PHA land sales that involve that existing stocks of public housing units. Congress must consider the future of the public. It says housing model at best, and any new public investment will provide maintenance funds to bring standard housing units and properties up to livable standards, but will still fail to address larger aims of upward mobility and dynamisms of local housing markets where land can be sold by PHAs and put to greater economic use, thereby benefiting entire local economies through greater private investment, productivity and employment opportunities, and increased tax revenues. Any long-term view of HUD future must include maintaining the strong financial operations and reliable reporting that are needed to run a $50 billion per year agency. Before the Trump administration, HUD effectively did not have a chief financial officer. How can you be bringing in that much money or dealing with that much money and don't have a chief financial officer? For 8 years, and HUD's financial infrastructure inevitably deteriorated. The department's auditors were unable to conclude that HUD's internal operations were producing accurate financial reporting. The auditors had identified multiple material weaknesses and significant deficiencies in the department's internal financial controls. Overall, the deterioration of HUD's financial infrastructure led to a lack of accountability with respect to the use of taxpayer funds, as well as to pervasive difficulties with operations and program implementations. However, by hiring a new CFO from the private sector, not from the government, from the private sector, that man, that's big. From the private sector, with proven track record of visionary leadership, HUD was able to implement an agency-wide governance structure that improved its financial processes and internal controls and harnessed the power of innovative new technologies to bring a modernized business mind state to the agency's financial infrastructure. By the end of the Trump administration, for the first time in nearly a decade, HUD was able to address all of its previously identified material weaknesses, and the auditors was able to use their first clean audit report on HUD financial statement and internal controls. So from the time Trump got into office, he was able to clean those books up financially. This is one of the reasons why they're pressing so hard not to get Trump in office as well, because Trump is a businessman. Trump understands numbers. You got people who read and understand what it is that they read. They're able to comprehend that. What Trump understands is numbers. He knows how numbers work. He knows what makes money. He knows what don't make money, and he understands that the order of how things is supposed to be. And so I'm sure when they brought him, one of the first things he did was looked at the HUD program. Why not? Because it's a program that was implemented by the Democrats. That's what they do. The Democrats come in. First thing that they're going to look at is a program that's implemented by the Republicans. This don't make no sense. And so he looked at the HUD. He couldn't even make sense of it because they didn't even have a CFO. Money coming in and people dipping in the pot, taking money out, doing this, doing that. These are our tax monies. And we're not seeing any of it go to work for us. Just take a trip down to wherever it is that you want to. You know your city better than I do. You will see. You'll see that if HUD was doing what it was supposed to do, there would be programs at least for the people that are on the streets. But they're not. So when Trump got in, he was able to issue their first clean audit report on HUD's financial statements and internal control. That sound like to me, that should have been some people that should have been indicted. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But finally, and more fundamentally, Congress could consider a wholesale overhaul of HUD that contemplates devolving many HUD functions to states and localities, with any remaining federal functions consolidated to other federal agencies. For example, by transferring loan guarantee programs to SBA, Small Business Association, moving Indian housing programs to the Department of the Interior, moving rental assistance, mortgage assistance insurance programs, and GNMA to a redesignated housing and home finance agency. Generally, this reform path could consolidate some programs, eliminate others that have failed to produce meaningful long-term results, and narrow the scope of many programs so that they are closer to what they were when they were created. And there you go, folks. That is the Housing Urban Development, better known as HUD, out of the Project 2025. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I was able to get through that in an hour's time. That's not bad. May the Most High continue to bless y'all. Y'all have a blessed day. And I will be back as soon as I can with another part of the document of the Project 2025. All right. Y'all take it easy. Shalom.